Okay, so today's Daf Yomi is Daf Yomi for Shabbos Kodesh. That's Bava Kamma Ayin Tes. We're going to start on the bottom of Ayin Ches of a base, the bottom line of 78b. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Ganav v'nasan la'achar. Let's say somebody steals it, but then he gives it to somebody else to slaughter. He doesn't give it to him as a gift, but he gives it to him and says, I want you to slaughter it for me. Or ganav v'nasan la'achar machar, or gives it to somebody else to sell it. Basically makes him his agent, either slaughter or sell it. Or ganav v'hikdish, or if he steals something and then consecrates it to the temple. Or ganav v'hikif, or he steals something and then he sells it on credit, meaning to say, he says, I'm selling it to you, you pay me the money when you have it. Or ganav v'hichlif, or he steals and then exchanges it with someone else for something else. Or ganav v'nasim matan, or he gives it as a gift. Or ganav upara, or if he steals it and he pays chobo, he pays his debt. Or ganav upara be'kifo, or he steals it and he pays off his credit card bills. Or ganav v'shal savonis bebeis chamav, or if he steals it and gives it as a payment to his father-in-law for, let's say, a bridal gift. In all these cases, mishalim tashumi arba v'chamisha. In all these cases, he has to pay the 4 or 5 times penalty. Then Gemara says, well, what's the chiddush here? Ma'ik hamashmon, what's it teaching us? Gemara explains Hashmin and Reisha. It's teaching us the first cause is teaching us ganav v'nasan la'achar tabach, that if in case where he steals it and then he asks somebody else to slaughter for him, he appoints the other person as his agent. That's the chiddush that it's teaching us. The that there's an agency for sin. So an afagav the B'kol Torah kula, even though in the rest of the Torah ain't shliach advar avera, even though in the rest of the Torah there's no agency for sin, hacha yesh shliach advar avera. Here there is an agency for sin. In the case of where you steal it and give somebody else to slaughter it, then we do say that even though somebody else is the one who did the slaughtering, you're going to be liable. My time. Well, what's the reason? Utavachu macharo. It says if he slaughters it or sells it. Ma machir de lo avshar de lo avaydeachar. Just like selling needs somebody else. Af tavicha aydeachar. So too the slaughter requires somebody else. And so therefore, af tavicha aydeachar mechayev. So therefore, we're going to say there's agency for sin, even though in general throughout the Talmud there's no agency for sin. This is one of the 2 exceptions. The other exception is in the case of Me'ilah, the misappropriation of temple property. If you ask an agent to be the one to misappropriate, then you're also going to be responsible. Rashmin and Seifa, and the last clause is teaching us that even if you steal it and then give it to the temple, that's also considered a type of theft. Ganav v'hikdish. If you steal it and then give it to the temple, that's a type of theft. Because Mali Mecharo Lahedjo, Mali Mecharo L'Shamayim. What do we care who you sold it to? If you sold it to a regular person or if you sold it to the heavens, in either case, we're going to say that basically it's considered a sale. So even consecrating to the heavens is going to be considered like you sold it and you're responsible to pay the penalty. Says the Mishnah, Ganav b'reshus habalim. Let's say you, hold on 1 second. Let's say you stole it while it's in the domain of the person who you stole it from. And then you slaughtered it or sold it outside of their domain. Or you stole it outside their domain. And then you slaughtered it or sold it in their domain. Or you did everything outside their domain. You stole it and you slaughtered or sold it. In all these cases, you pay 4 or 5 times the amount. But if you stole it, slaughtered it, and sold it in their domain, then we're going to say it is exempt. That if you did everything in their domain, then the thief is exempt from everything. And what's the reasoning? Because there you haven't actually stolen it yet, because it's still in his domain, so you haven't acquired it. So that's the reasoning why you'll be potter. But let's say you're pulling it to go out. The thief was pulling the animal to go out, and then umeis bershus abam. So he's pulling it to go out, and it dies while it's still in the domain of the owner. He's going to be exempt because he never acquired it yet. The thief didn't actually steal it. But let's say he picked it up, or he brought it out of the domain of the owner. So then if he picked it up even in the domain of the owner, or he brought it out of the domain of the owner, then under those circumstances, and the animal dies, he's liable. He has to pay the penalty because there he acquired it. The son of Lebechoros Beno, let's say the thief gave it to a Kohen for the first redemption of this firstborn son. It's the equivalent of the 5 selah, or a Balchov, or if he gives it to a person who he owes the money to. Or l'shomer chinam, or he gives it to somebody to watch for as a guardian for free, or l'shol a borrower, sachar, or somebody's paying money to watch it, or l'sochar to a renter. In all these cases, via moshlo umes. In all those cases, he's pulling it out, and the animal dies. Bershus abalim potter. In all these cases, they're pulling it out, but it's still in the domain of the owner. He's going to be exempt because the thief is exempt from everything because it never left his domain. Rashi gives another explanation that when it says liable, it means the thief is the one who's liable. And then he continues. Let's say he picks it up or it comes out of the domain, then he's going to be liable. Under these circumstances, he's liable. So, Gemara now says, Baya Meimer asks the question, Tiknu Meshicha B'Shomrim, that we said that a guardian, a person who's watching it, is not going to be responsible. He hasn't assumed ownership or responsibility for his task of watching it until he pulls the animal towards him. So our Meimer is asking this question: Tiknu Meshicha B'Shomer Molo. Does the guardian, does he, in order to be responsible, does he actually have to acquire the object? Does he have to pull it towards him? Amar Rav Yemer Tashma. So let's learn it from our Mishnah. Nasnu leBechoros Beno, O leBalchov, O leShomer Chinam, O leShor Nosisachar, O Socharayim Moshlo v'Yotze v'Meis B'Shus Balam Potter. Then it says if he gives it basically for the guardian to watch, and he pulls it towards him, and it goes out, and it dies while it's still in the domain of the owner, he's exempt. And my love, aren't we talking about when it says he's exempt, that if he's pulling it out, that it's referring to the shomer? And when it says, and we see from here, we're going to say, what are we talking about here? Isn't the scenario that we're talking about here that it's a shomer? Ishmamina takinu tignu mishicha b'shomrim. Aren't we talking about a case here? What's the scenario that we're referring to here? Aren't we referring to, in this scenario, that the shomer is going to be exempt, and the ganaf is going to be the one who's chayiv? That it says under these circumstances, when it says in the Mishnah, when it says it's exempt, who's the one who's exempt? Aren't we talking about that the shomer is exempt and the thief is the one who's responsible? And from the fact that the thief is responsible only if the shomer pulled it, now we see from here that the meshicha is a requirement by the shomer, because if the shomer was chayav without having done the meshicha, then we would have said the thief is responsible even if he didn't do the meshicha. Gemara says no. What we're talking about here is when it says he's pater amrle lo ganav. The one who's exempt is the thief. The thief is exempt. Meaning to say that the Mishnah is talking about a case where the owner of the animal gave permission to the Kohen or the creditor or the Shomer to take the animal, and somebody else came along and stole the animal from there, and the thief was pulling it and going out. And if the animal died in the domain of the owner, the thief will be potter because he didn't actually acquire it yet, and so therefore it's not going to be proving the case. So the one who's giving it to the Shomer or to the owner is the or to the Kohen is the one who's giving it to the Shomer or to the Kohen is the owner of the animal. So the Gemara says that was the approach, and that's how the Gemara explains it. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, the Gemara says, but why would you say that the Ganav is the one who's doing it? The Tana of the first clause of the Mishnah already taught that law. The Gemara says, Tana Ganav Shaganav Beis Balam, the Tana Ganav Shaganav Beis Shomer. The Mishnah wants to teach us the law of a thief who takes it from the owner's house, and also the thief who takes it from a guardian's house. In both cases, he has to pay the double. Amar le Rav Ashi, so Rav Ashi says to Ramemar, Lo titchaya. No, that's not a good response. Mali Ganav Shaganav Beis Shomer, Mali Ganav Shaganav Beis Balam. Why would we care who he stole it from? Helav must be that we're talking about Shomer, that the guardian is the one who's taking the animal out, and the guardian is exempt, and the Ganav is liable. And we have to learn from here that indeed that's how the Shomer assumes responsibility only once he's pulled it. Just like we say that if somebody wants to purchase something, it's not enough just to give them money. You have to actually pull it into your possession. So too, we say that there is a Mashiach also by these guardians. That's exactly the principle. And just like real estate can be acquired by giving money or a contract or presumptive force, also, if your sclerus is going to be acquired with sclerus is renting, is acquired with kesef, shchar, and chazaka. So the Gemara says, what does sclerus mean? What do we mean when we say that sclerus is going to be acquired with money, contract, or presumptive status? Sclerus demai. Sclerus dementalton. If we want to say that if he rents to his friends something that's a movable object on top of 79b, like utensils, and then he has to do this presumptive status of kesef, shtar, and chazaka, metalto b'nei shtar. Movables don't have contracts. No, if you rent real estate, that's how you can rent it with money, a contract, or a presumptive status. So we learned in the Mishnah that if the Ganav pulls the animal, he acquires it with respect to theft. The Gemara says, how does he do this? Let's say we see that the thief was hiding, the witnesses saw the thief that he was hiding in the forest to steal the animals that were grazing there. And afterwards he slaughtered and sold it. He has to pay 4 or 5 times the amount. He didn't. Why do we do that? He didn't actually pull it. So basically he was hiding in the forest, and afterwards he just slaughtered the animal. He pays the amount, but why? He never actually pulled it. So Amar Chlista, Sheikisha b'makal. No, he hit the animal with a stick, and the animal followed him, and therefore that's considered Mashiach. The Gemara says, Amri. So they said in the yeshiva, well, since they saw him actually do this, then he's not a thief, he's a robber. There's a difference between a thief and a robber, as the Gemara is going to explain. But the robber does not pay the punitive damages of the 4 and 5 times the amount. Only the thief does. So once you see him, the Gemara assumes, then he's not considered a thief, he's considered a robber. The Gemara says, no. Since he was hiding from them, then he's in the realm of a thief and not a robber. So what's the case of a robber then? The Gemara says, what's the case of a robber? Like we saw in 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 21. Like Benayo ben Yoda taught, that he steals the spear from the Egyptian and he kills him with his spear. Meaning to say that Gezela, robber, is somebody who takes it straight with his hand. And that's what Benayo did. Rabbi Yochanan gives a different verse, Kigom Balei Shlem. Like the people in the book of Judges, the people from Shechem who rebelled against Avimelech, where it states, "Vayisimu lo ba'alei Shechem ma'arvim al rashei arim." The people from Shechem were ambushing them on the top of the mountains. Vayigzalu as kol asher yavor aleim b'derech, and they robbed everybody who passed over them. So we see that Vayigzalu, Gazon is somebody who robs other people. Rabbi Avo, my time alone, why did Rabbi Avo cite the verse on Judges? Since they initially were hiding, they're not robbers. They don't fit into that category. Rabbi Yochanan, how did Kamatamri? No, they were hiding not because it was changing the status of what they were doing, but rather they didn't want people to see them and run away before they got there. But they didn't hide because they were afraid that people were going to catch them. You just wanted to make sure that they were able to pull off the robbery. So Shaul Talmidav es Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai. This is the famous Gemara. The students asked Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, Torah beganav Yoser Migazan. Why is the Torah stricter with a thief than a robber? How is the Torah stricter with a thief? A thief is someone who steals secretly. He pays the double fine and also the 4 or 5 times fine, whereas the robber doesn't pay that. So why is the Torah stricter with a thief than a robber? So he says the robber compares the honor of the slave to the honor. The robber equates the honor of the servant, meaning a person, to the honor of his creator. Meaning he says, I'm not afraid of man and I'm not afraid of God. I'll violate the Torah by robbing, and I'll violate man by doing it in public. V'zeb, whereas the robber, lo hishva kvod aviv l'kvod kono. He does not equate the kvod aviv l'kvod kono. He gives more credence to more respect to the value of the servant than to the value of the creator. And so therefore he steals in secret because he's afraid of man, but he's not afraid of God. The robber, it's as though he's making the eye below as though it doesn't see. It's making the ear below as though it doesn't hear. As it states, May Hashem lastir etzav vayabem achshach ma'asem. And it says, woe to the wicked ones that are immersed in their thoughts to conceal their wicked counsel from Hashem. They think Hashem doesn't pay attention to what goes on the earth, and they do their actions in the darkness. They think that they're hiding them, and therefore it's their sin. And it says, they think that God will not see and God will not understand. They think God doesn't see. Rabbi Meir, Mashalom, Mishum Rabbi Gamliel, Ma'adavar Domel, Shnei Bnei Adam Shayu Be'ir. That's parable. 2 people were in the city, Va'asu Mishteh, and they did a party. Echad Zimen Espnei Ha'ir, Wo Zimen Espnei HaMelech. One of them invited the people of the city, but did not invite the princes of the king, the children of the king. One didn't invite anybody. Who's worse? The one who invites the people from the city but does not invite the king, he's worse. Come and see the greatness of work. Sure, an ox, the ox, because when you steal the ox, the guy can't do his job. Chamisha. Therefore, you have to pay 5 times the penalty. But the lamb, if you steal the lamb and then sell it or slaughter it, therefore the guy's not missing his job. Arba. He has to pay 4 times the penalty. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. This is also another classic Gemara. Imnei Bore Kamma Gadol Kavod Aprius. Come and look and see how great is the honor that we have to show for another person. Sure, Shalach Barago, if the ox walks on its feet, and therefore the robber doesn't have to carry it on the shoulders. If he orders or sells it, he pays chamish, he pays 5. But says Sheir Kivo Aksefo, but a lamb which he puts on his shoulders, and therefore he denigrates himself. The Torah says we're going to be more lenient than you because you embarrassed yourself. You only have to pay arba. You only have to pay 4. There are other reasons why. There's a distinction between a ganaf, a thief, and a galzan, a robber. So one reason is because a thief is more common than a robber, because you could be a thief anywhere, but a robber you could only do just in the city. Another reason, this is from the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, is that robbery is something that's known, and therefore you can more easily take it back. But the theft is not something that's known. And another reason the Ben Yoyada brings down is because the robber, by stealing in public, he's basically humiliated himself. But the thief, that nobody sees him, he's not humiliated. Another answer is when he says that the thief is not concerned that he's not concerned, will cry out to God and do judgment against him. Okay, so this is that discussion, very powerful discussion. Just to the next Mishnah, we don't raise a small animal like a sheep or a goat in the land of Israel. Rashi says because of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, because they destroy the fields, and that what they do is they go around grazing and they destroy the fields. But we raise them in Syria. It's the other side of the Jordan, and Rashi says it's like outside of Israel, and so therefore we don't have the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, or we raise them in the wilderness. We also don't raise chickens in Jerusalem because of kachim, because sacred food, because the Jews eat there the shlamim and the toda, and the chickens peck wherever they are. And we're worried that maybe they'll bring a sheret and make the kachim tamei. And the Kohanim should not raise. And the Kohanim cannot raise these chickens anywhere in Eretz Yisrael because of the Taharos. The Kohanim always have to eat truma. They need to be careful that it's not tamei, and the chickens are possibly dangerous conduits of tumah. You're never allowed to raise pigs. And Rashi says the Gemara is going to explain why. And a person is not allowed to raise a dog because the dog bites and barks, causes the women to have abortions, to miscarry. Unless it's tied up in a chain. Ein porsin nishuvim layonim. We don't spread traps to catch doves. Rashi says because otherwise we're concerned you're going to catch the other person's doves. Unless it's 30 ris, which Rashi says is 4 milin, approximately 4 miles, a little bit less. Here's mil, it's 3/4 of a mile, so it's 3 miles. So we don't, unless you're 3 miles distance from the city. So okay, we'll stop here. This is the daf yomi for Shabbos, a beautiful daf, and God willing, we'll pick this up on Shabbos Kodesh.